Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I worked as a civilian contractor with the US military overseas. It was a decent gig that paid well and gave me some interesting experiences abroad. The job required me to live off base in a local apartment complex that was popular with American service members. Most of us civilians and soldiers who lived there drove what we called hoopty cars, beat up old vehicles that got passed from one person to another when people rotated out. These cars were usually worth maybe $1,000 to $2,000 at most, but they got the job done. One morning I was running late for work and backing out of my parking spot when I heard that dreaded crunch sound. I had backed right into another car. I put my car in park and got out to assess the damage. Both cars were still running fine, which was a relief. The other driver was already out of his vehicle and I could see he was wearing his military uniform. The damage was minor, just a small dent in his rear bumper. Nothing that would affect the car's function at all. I walked over to him and immediately apologized, taking full responsibility for the accident. I suggested we handle it between ourselves with cash instead of involving insurance or police. Since both our cars were basically worthless hoopty cars and the damage was so small, I figured he might even just wave it off. Even if he wanted some money, I was prepared to pay a reasonable amount. He told me he wanted to call the police instead. I said that was fine, but offered to go on base with him where I could give him $300 cash right away. He said that wasn't enough money. I raised my offer to $500, which was way more than the damage was worth, but I just wanted to keep things simple. What happened next shocked me. Without any warning, he punched me straight in the face. It was a complete sucker punch that caught me totally off guard. Before I could even react, he jumped back in his car and sped off, nearly running me over in the process. I stood there for a moment, my face throbbing, trying to process what just happened. Then I remembered something important. My car had a dash camera that recorded everything. I drove straight to the Provost Marshal office on base, which is basically the military police station. I explained the whole situation to the military police officer and showed him the footage from my dash camera. The video clearly showed everything: the accident, me trying to negotiate, him punching me, and then him nearly running me over when he fled. The military police officer told me they could track him down using his license plate and asked if I wanted to press charges with the local authorities as well. I said not at this time, thinking the military justice system could handle this appropriately and the guy would learn his lesson through military discipline. A few weeks later, I found out what his punishment was. He got 60 days of extra duty, was reduced in rank, and had to forfeit part of his paycheck. A few days after his punishment was finalized, I was shopping at the commissary on base when I spotted him. When he saw me, he started walking over with an angry expression. He began insulting me, saying I thought I was tough for getting him in trouble. I told him he needed to calm down and should have learned his lesson by now. He called me a coward who didn't know how to take a punch. I reminded him that I had held back on really destroying his life and could have pressed criminal charges from the beginning. He said he had already been punished and I couldn't touch him again. Then he walked away, making it clear he wasn't sorry about anything. A store employee had witnessed the entire confrontation, so I got their contact information and reported this new incident to his commander. His commander called me the next day and told me he had specifically ordered the soldier not to interact with me. The commander said the soldier was clearly not learning his lesson and recommended I involve the local authorities at this point. That's exactly what I did. I contacted a local attorney who specialized in cases involving military personnel. He reviewed my evidence and agreed to take the case, though he required payment up front since civil cases against soldiers can be complicated. The case went to a local civilian court off base. I had all my evidence, the dash camera footage, witness statements, documentation of his military punishment, and proof of the commissary incident. The soldier decided to represent himself, which turned out to be a huge mistake. During the proceedings, he had multiple outbursts where he would interrupt the judge and argue with the court. His behavior was absolutely unprofessional and disrespectful. When the judge finally announced the judgment, I was awarded $50,000. That's when things got really interesting. The soldier immediately started cursing at the judge, calling him names and claiming the army would cover for him. The judge's expression went ice cold when he increased the judgment to $80,000 and asked me if I also wanted to press criminal charges against the soldier. I looked at the soldier, who was still fuming and clearly hadn't learned anything from this experience. I told the judge I wanted to pursue criminal charges as well. My lawyer pulled me aside after the hearing and explained something called an international hold. He said that with this judgment we could petition for an international hold that would prevent the soldier from leaving the country until I was paid in full. The military had agreements with the host country to honor these holds. At this point, I had already paid thousands of dollars in legal fees. I wasn't about to let this soldier just disappear without paying what he owed. I told my lawyer to proceed with the international hold. About a month later, the international hold was approved and the military was officially notified. 2 months after that, the criminal case concluded and he was sentenced to 90 days in the local jail. By then, his commander had moved him into the barracks on base, probably to keep a closer eye on him. I'll never forget the day I got the call that the military police had turned him over to local authorities to begin serving his sentence. He was going to jail and still owed me $80,000. For a whole year, I heard nothing. Then one day, his commander called me and said he needed me to come in and make a statement regarding the case. They were in the process of discharging him from the military. During that statement, I learned that he was close to scraping together enough money to pay me and lift the international hold. The commander also asked if my lawyer would make a statement, which he did. A few weeks later, I got an unexpected phone call from a woman who introduced herself as his ex-wife. Apparently, his wife had divorced him during all this drama. She told me her ex-husband had the money and needed to know how to pay me. I gave her all the payment details, and sure enough, a few days later, the full $80,000 appeared in my account. I called her back to confirm I had received payment. She asked me to send a receipt so he could get the international hold lifted and come back to the States. I asked how he had managed to get that much money. She explained that he had maxed out all his credit cards and his family had helped him out. She also mentioned that the army had officially discharged him the week before. I sent her the receipt, and that was the last I ever heard from any of them. I work in IT and moved into this nice 3-unit townhome some years ago. What really makes this place special, though, is the neighbors. My next-door neighbor has become one of my closest friends. She's an amazing cook and always making way too much food. We worked out this perfect arrangement where she could grab sodas from my fridge when I'm not home, and in return she'd make extra portions of her meals for me and share her alcohol for our weekend get-togethers. We trusted each other completely with house keys. It worked great for both of us. Then there's Karen. She lived in a different building across the street, but everyone in our little community knew her. She had this reputation for being loud and pushy, always getting into everyone's business. We were all polite to her though, mainly because nobody wanted to deal with having a crazy neighbor making life miserable. The trouble started when Karen spotted my friend leaving my house one afternoon. Karen walked right up to her with this suspicious look on her face and demanded to know what was going on and why she was coming out of my house. My friend, being the honest person she is, explained our arrangement. She told Karen that we were friends, and when I wasn't home, she'd grab a soda from my fridge while I got to enjoy the meal she cooked. She probably thought it was no big deal, but Karen's brain went somewhere completely different. She apparently thought our friendliness toward her meant she was part of our inner circle now. The next thing I knew, I got this text from her trying to rat out my friend like she was doing me some big favor. She told me that my neighbor had been in my house when I wasn't there. I texted back that it was fine and thanked her. A week later, Karen showed up at my front door. She didn't even bother with small talk and cut right to the chase. She asked me why I wouldn't give her a key like I did for my friend. I had to think fast. There was no way I was giving this woman access to my house. I made up some story about it being a safety thing because I was the only one with a fire extinguisher and my landlord wouldn't let me give out more keys. It was complete nonsense, but she seemed to buy it and finally left me alone. at least for a while. About a month later, I was carrying in this bucket of fireball shots I'd picked up for a party. Karen spotted me from across the street and practically sprinted over. She asked what I had and seemed really interested. I was struggling with the seal on the bucket, and honestly, I just wanted to get inside. So I handed her a couple of shots to get rid of her. She thanked me and called me babe, then said she loved me. I cringed so hard at that, but I figured I was just being a decent neighbor, and we had to keep things peaceful in the community. After that, Karen started messaging me like we were best friends. She'd send me random updates about her day and ask personal questions. I mostly ignored her, but I'd still check on her house when she was away, because that's what neighbors do, even annoying ones. Then came the day that changed everything. I was visiting my mom when my phone rang. It was my home security company asking if I needed the police. My blood went cold. My friend and other people with keys knew my security code. They had 60 seconds to enter it before the alarm would call the police. Something was very wrong. I raced home, my mind spinning with possibilities. When I got there, my front door was wide open. The summer heat was pouring into my air-conditioned house, and I could practically hear my electric meter spinning. Two police officers were standing in my living room, and there was Karen standing at my kitchen counter like she owned the place. Karen told the officers that I was there and said that I let her in my house because we were best friends. I stood there with my mouth hanging open, trying to process what I was seeing. Apparently, Karen had somehow gotten the garage code to my friend's house. During one of her unauthorized visits there, she found my house keys and just helped herself to my place. She took my stuff like it was hers, and when the alarm went off, she didn't bother texting me or even leaving when the police showed up. One of the officers asked me if I knew this woman. I told him she was a neighbor, but I absolutely did not give her permission to be in my house. The officer said she claimed we were close friends and that I let her come and go when she pleased. I told him that was completely false and that she was basically a stranger who lived across the street. Karen's face started to change when she realized the police weren't buying her story. She insisted that we were friends because I had given her fireball shots and said it was fine when she texted about my neighbor. I explained that I was just being polite to her and that didn't mean she could break into my house. The officers had been there for 8 minutes before I arrived. 8 whole minutes of Karen roaming around my house doing who knows what. I was furious and scared. I pressed charges immediately. To make matters worse, the city hit me with a $100 fine for having an unregistered alarm system. I was so mad about that. I paid the fee and left the bill in Karen's doorway that night. It was petty, but I didn't care. The weeks leading up to court were tense. Karen avoided me completely, which was actually a relief. My friend felt terrible about Karen getting her garage code. Even though it wasn't her fault, Karen was a criminal. Court day finally came. Karen shuffled in looking nervous and scared. Nothing like the confident woman who'd been standing in my kitchen acting like she lived there. Her lawyer tried to make it sound like an innocent misunderstanding. He told the judge that his client genuinely believed they were close friends because there had been friendly exchanges and shared drinks. The judge wasn't buying it. She pointed out that Karen had broken into 2 houses and said this wasn't about misunderstanding friendship boundaries. I explained everything to the judge. How Karen had demanded a key, how I'd politely declined, how she'd somehow gotten into my friend's house and then mine. I emphasized that basic neighborly politeness doesn't equal permission to commit burglary. I told the judge that giving someone a drink at their request doesn't mean they can break into your house when you're not home. The judge wasn't having any of Karen's excuses. She said this was clearly a violation of trust and privacy, and that the defendant had broken into not 1, but 2 homes without permission. Karen was found guilty. She had to pay fines, do community service, and stay away from both my friend's house and mine. After court, Karen approached me in the parking lot. She apologized and said she really thought we were friends. I told her that being polite to a neighbor doesn't make someone your friend, and friends don't break into each other's houses. She just nodded and walked away. I never saw her much after that. Word got around the neighborhood about what happened, and people started keeping their distance from her. My friend and I kept our arrangement, but we both learned to be more careful about who we trusted. We installed better locks and changed all our codes. The whole experience taught me that some people will take any small kindness and twist it into something it's not. Karen moved out about 6 months later. I'm 32, married with 2 young sons, and I've always had what you'd call a complicated relationship with my older sister. She's 31 and has always believed our parents favor me over her. Despite all this tension, I genuinely love my sister. When she got engaged last year, I was thrilled for her. I helped with wedding planning, threw her a bridal shower, and did everything I could to make sure her day would be perfect. I wanted nothing more than for her to have the wedding of her dreams. The wedding itself was beautiful. My sister looked stunning, the ceremony was touching, and the reception was everything she'd hoped for. My husband and I brought our 2 boys, ages 5 and 7, and they were surprisingly well behaved throughout the entire event. When the evening wound down, my sister and her new husband announced they were heading to the hotel bar for an after party. They invited all the younger family members and close friends to join them for more drinks, dancing, and celebration. It sounded fun, but my husband and I looked at each other and knew we weren't up for it. Our boys were already back at our hotel suite with a babysitter we'd hired for the evening. They'd been troopers during the wedding, but they were exhausted, and frankly, so were we. The thought of more loud music, crowded spaces, and drunk relatives didn't appeal to us at all. My husband told me he was done for the night and asked what I thought. I agreed with him completely. We decided to head back and relieve the babysitter. When we were making our way out of the venue, we ran into some of our cousins and mutual friends who were also leaving. They seemed to be in the same boat as us, tired but not quite ready to call it a night. One of our cousins mentioned that he was wiped out but didn't want the night to end just yet. A family friend agreed, saying she couldn't handle the hotel bar scene right now. That's when I had what seemed like a harmless idea at the time. I told them that if they wanted to hang out somewhere quieter, they were welcome to come back to our hotel room. I suggested we could just chat and maybe have a drink or two before calling it a night. Everyone's faces lit up. It seemed like the perfect solution. We could continue celebrating in a more relaxed environment without the chaos of a crowded bar. My husband said it sounded good to him, but everyone needed to keep it down since the boys were sleeping. So 6 people ended up coming back with us, 3 cousins and 3 family friends. Our hotel suite was spacious enough to accommodate everyone comfortably. We ordered some snacks from room service, opened a bottle of wine, and just talked. It was honestly one of the most enjoyable parts of the entire weekend. We reminisced about old family stories, caught up on each other's lives, and shared funny memories from the wedding. There was no loud music, no dancing, no drama, just good conversation and laughter. Around 1 in the morning, everyone started getting tired. One of our friends thanked us for hosting and said it was exactly what she needed that night. I told her it was my pleasure and that I was glad everyone had a good time. They all thanked us and headed back to their rooms. My husband and I cleaned up quickly and went to sleep, feeling like we'd ended the perfect day on a perfect note. That feeling lasted exactly 1 week. Last Tuesday, I got a text from my sister that made my stomach drop. She said we needed to talk about what I did at her wedding. When I asked what she meant, she told me not to play dumb. She accused me of hosting my own after party and stealing her guests. I stared at my phone and texted back that I just invited some people back to our room to hang out quietly, and that it wasn't anything like her after party. She explained that 4 of the 6 people who went with me were supposed to come to the hotel bar with her and her husband. Only 3 people showed up because I convinced the others to go with me instead. This was news to me. I had no idea who had been specifically invited to her after party versus who had just been included in the general announcement. I replied that I didn't know they were specifically invited to hers and that I just offered our room to whoever wanted a quieter option. She said that wasn't the point and that I should have known better. She called it typical golden child behavior from me, claiming I always have to steal her thunder. The conversation went downhill from there. She accused me of deliberately trying to upstage her on her wedding day. She claimed I'd ruined her after party by poaching her guests and that I'd always been jealous of her getting attention. I told her that wasn't fair and she knew it. I reminded her that I spent months helping her plan this wedding and asked why I would want to ruin it. She replied that it was because I can't stand it when the spotlight isn't on me for 5 minutes. I tried explaining that the vibe in our room was completely different from what she had planned. Her after party was about dancing and partying, while ours was just quiet conversation. I pointed out that the people who came with us probably weren't in the mood for a high-energy bar scene anyway, so they might not have gone to hers regardless, but she wasn't hearing any of it. She hung up on me and we haven't spoken since. I called our mom hoping for some perspective, but she just said she could see both sides and didn't want to get involved. That's when I decided to ask some friends for advice, and they were split too. Some thought my sister was being ridiculous and that I'd done nothing wrong by offering people an alternative. Others felt I should have encouraged everyone to go to her after party instead of creating competition. The whole thing has been eating at me. I keep replaying that night, wondering if I should have handled it differently. Was I wrong to invite people back to our room? Should I have just gone to bed and let everyone figure out their own plans? But the more I think about it, the more frustrated I get. I wasn't trying to compete with my sister or steal her spotlight. I was just offering a quiet space for people who seemed tired and overwhelmed. The fact that some of those people had been invited to her after party wasn't something I considered or even known about. What really gets me is how this fits into the same old pattern with my sister. Everything becomes about her, feeling like I'm trying to outshine her, even when that's the furthest thing from my mind. I can't seem to do anything without it being interpreted through this lens of sibling rivalry that honestly, I thought we'd outgrown by now. The worst part is that this has completely overshadowed what should have been a beautiful memory of her wedding day. Instead of remembering how happy she looked walking down the aisle or how sweet her vows were, we're both stuck on this stupid argument about an after party that lasted 2 hours. 3 weeks later, my sister sent me another text. She told me she had talked to our cousin about what happened that night. I asked what she meant by that. She said that our cousin told her I specifically asked people not to go to her after party when I invited them to my room. My blood boiled. That was a complete lie. I texted back that it wasn't true and she knew it. She replied that our cousin had no reason to lie about this. I told her that neither did I, and that I never said anything negative about her after party. I explained that I just offered our room as an option, but then something clicked. I remembered that this specific cousin had always been jealous of my relationship with my sister. She'd stirred up drama between us before, and apparently she was doing it again. I suggested that my sister call the other people who were there that night and ask them what really happened. I told her not to just take our cousin's word for it. There was a long pause before her next text. She said she wasn't doing that. I asked why not, pointing out that if she really thought I sabotaged her after party, shouldn't she want to know the truth? She simply replied that she knew what happened, but I could tell she was starting to doubt herself. Over the next few days, I heard she had quietly asked a few people about that night. Turns out our cousin had been spreading lies about what I'd said and done. 2 of the people who'd been in our room that night reached out to me directly. One friend told me that my sister had asked her some weird questions about our hotel room gathering. She said she told my sister the truth, that I never said anything bad about her party, and that we all just wanted somewhere quiet to hang out. The other person was even more direct. Another cousin called to say she didn't know what had gotten into my sister, but that she'd been asking everyone about some conspiracy theory involving me. She told me she told my sister that she was being ridiculous and that I was nothing but gracious that night. A week later, my sister finally called me. She admitted that she may have misunderstood some things about that night. I asked what she meant. She explained that she talked to a few more people, and they all said I didn't try to talk anyone out of coming to her after party. There was a long silence. I asked if she believed me now. She apologized and said she thought she let her emotions get the better of her. I asked about our cousin and whether she figured out that she was lying. My sister confirmed that she confronted our cousin about it the day before. She admitted that our cousin confessed to making up the part about me bad-mouthing her after party. I felt vindicated but also sad that it had taken weeks and multiple conversations for my sister to believe me over someone who'd clearly been stirring up trouble. I asked why she didn't just trust me from the beginning. She said she didn't know, and that she guessed she was still dealing with some old insecurities about us. It wasn't the full apology I've been hoping for, but it was a start. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.